Huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Cryptid Clues. I am your host, Taylor Field. Before we get into this topic of Campfire Clues, just want to do a couple shoutouts and plugs. Check us out on our social media and our home-based website, CryptidClues.ca. Send us an email at CryptidClues@gmail.com if you want to say hi or you have any experiences or stories you just want to share and discuss with us. And then on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, you can find all of our content and links there as well. Be sure to check us out additionally on Patreon because you can get access to early episodes, ad-free episodes, and some Patreon exclusive only episodes. So it's definitely a good time over there. What else do I have to plug? I mean, I hope you guys again have had a great New Year, great Merry Christmas, and all that. We're full headstrong into January now. So again, this is a new kind of branch of show that'll be piggybacking off the main show. So the main episodes between me and Ruben, those are going to consistently release every Monday. And then this is another episode that'll release every Friday. And my goal with this is just to kind of go through and discuss, not everyone that I reach out to feels comfortable coming on the show, which is totally understandable, but they do give me permission to discuss their stories and everything. So I feel like those need to be addressed and put out into the public so people around the world can hear these experiences, relate to them, discuss about them and everything. So I did one already in the first week of January, and that covered some interesting things. And moving on from the Dogman, though, this episode is to cover something a little bit more personal to me and a bit more of the paranormal aspect. So when we're looking at, I'm not going to say demons in this case, like we discussed before. This is more entity apparition, and personally, this is not something that happened directly to me. It happened directly to my aunt and my uncle, and this story and experience I knew little about. I find it very interesting how much my uncle has actually had experienced, and a little bit of context. So my uncle is very much he's a hardworking man. He goes away for work out of town, and he's always working, at mills and doing a lot of labor, construction, and everything like that. He's very hands-on. He's always working. He's got a big shop. He's working like mechanic stuff, heavy, like doing sheet metal, aluminum, steel, all that stuff. He's a very handyman, crafting everything, building all his own things, building up machine parts and all that jazz. So he's not the kind of guy that would essentially go along with, hey, oh, you saw a ghost? Oh, you must be smoking something. And those are his words, basically. Now, let's go back a few decades. Now, I had stayed at one of their houses, and that house had actually not had anything, to my knowledge, nothing weird alluding to what was happening there. But the previous house, before they moved into that new home, that is where interesting things happened. Now, this experience starts off where they had just purchased this house, relatively new to them, but it was built a while ago, built a very long time ago. I believe a generation before them. Again, they have two kids, my cousins. They had two German Shepherds, my aunt and my uncle. They were all living there, and then my uncle had to go away out to work out of town. So it was just my aunt. One night, she is sleeping. She's in her bed. She wakes up, and she sees a man standing over her bed, head completely leaning forward over her, staring at her. She screams. She throws the blanket up. She runs to the light, flicks it on. The man is gone. No one in the room. She can't go back to sleep. So what she does is she explores the house, doesn't see any breaking of entering, no signs of anyone being in this home Everyone's fine. Dogs are fine. Kids are fine. So she calls my uncle. Relays to him that she experiences waking up. A man was there, and he disregards it. Again, my aunt's mother was staying there additionally as well during this time. My uncle just disregards it, like, oh, you both of you are just kind of like off your rockers, so to speak, and that's that. Call ends. She still can't get back to sleep. She's pacing around, and I believe once around like the 4 a.m., 5 a.m. time rolled around, she's going back to bed. She's starting to feel okay. Like, I'm tired. I'm sure it was just me imagining it. That's fine. So she goes back to bed. Now, when she does, she wakes up again shortly after, but this time she feels something. Her sheets on her top of her are tucked in to the point where she can't move. She is completely pinned on the bed with no ability of lifting up or anything, just like she's being restrained. And sure enough, at the end of the bed, against the wall, she sees the same man, Apparition, standing there looking at her. And she freaks out. Within seconds, she's able to get up. The guy is gone. And now she's really freaked out. Again, she explores the house, doesn't find any signs of anything. She reaches out to my uncle again. Nothing. You know, he just disregards it, like, okay, like this is weird, like, but this can't be anything serious. Like, there must be an explanation. He's a very realistic man. So, shortly after that, he gets back from work. You know, he's sleeping. And around the 2 a.m., 3 a.m., he hears thuds, loud thuds smacking on the door. He runs out there. He sees what's going on. German Shepherds aren't barking. Nothing going on there. The weird thing, additionally to this, he looks out the windows and he doesn't see any of his motion sensor lights. Now, when I earlier, in retrospect of what I was saying, he had a shop. Like, he's a man that likes to live kind of a little bit more remotely with the family. Big house, lots of floodlights everywhere. That's why he has a German Shepherd. It's like he enjoys that security so that no one can get on this property without being spotted. But there was no indicator, no lights, no nothing. So he feels something is off, but he disregards it. And so what does he do? He goes back to bed. A couple nights pass. Then finally it happens again. And this time he was ready. He grabbed a stick, like staff thing he had. He jumped out of bed and he went straight to the window, only to see nothing. No lights. German Shepherds weren't barking. He was so confident that there was no plausible way whoever knocked and banged on that door could have made it out and down the driveway out of the property in time. Again, there would have been lights that would have triggered because he had the whole place rigged up with security lights and floodlights. But nothing went. Nothing was triggered. That's when things started to get a little bit weird for him. He learned after the fact that his wife, my aunt, the mother that was staying there, when they disclosed all this information, she acknowledged, okay, there's something that I experienced as well. And before we get to that, I'm just going to jump to a quick ad break. So I'll be right back, and then we'll get right back into it. So stay tuned. And we're back. So the really freaky thing about what my aunt's mother had experienced was when she was staying at this house. Now, you can imagine like a ground level of a house. When you get to the end of this hallway, there's a few steps, maybe like 3 to 4 or 5 steps, goes up to another second level, and you continue and there's more parts of the house that way. As my aunt's mother was walking down this hall, approaching the staircase, she stopped. At the end, descending down the stairs, she saw the same entity man apparition that my aunt saw in her bedroom. It came down the stairs, it walked towards her, and as she described it, it actually walked through her shoulder, and she was frozen in fear. She could feel the chill of something moving through her, and it terrified her to the point where she never was staying at that house ever again. So, after the mother had left, and it was again just the aunt and my cousins and dogs still in this house. My uncle, yet again, had to go away for work. But here's the interesting thing. Out of the blue, one day, a woman shows up at the house. She's wearing all black with a black veil, which again my aunt found extremely peculiar. She calls up my uncle, and she explains to him the experience of this encounter with this unknown person. How it goes is this unknown woman approached my aunt and inquired about purchasing the house. She details how her father built this house and 2 other houses surrounding them on these properties. She says she used to live in this house and that she remembers it very well, to the point of wall color, floor coloring, and a few other notable features in this house. Now, again, the house has gone through some renovations. Like currently, it doesn't resemble what she's discussing and disclosing detail-wise, so kind of goes over her head. My aunt says, hey, we just bought this house. We just moved in. We're not really looking at selling it right now. And the woman carries on about her day and leaves the property. That's when, again, she calls my uncle, tells my uncle everything. My uncle says, it's too bad you didn't get her information, because I bet that the man that is being seen in our house is her father. Time passes, and my uncle begins doing renovations on the home. Now, as he puts it, when he was pulling the flooring out in the kitchen, he probably went through 4 layers of plywood and just several other things, just getting down there to the baseline of the floor to put in new flooring. When he gets down to that last layer of flooring, this would have been the original layer that was installed, it was exactly the green type that this woman was telling and stating. So you have that to kind of reiterate the fact that this older woman either just knew or snuck into their house, smashed the floor, and looked at the color, or she genuinely did live in that house when she was a little girl, and her father really did build these homes. Now, whether or not that adds credibility to the fact that this older man kind of terrorizing the people in this home, my family, I can't say for sure, but it definitely was something that was causing these disturbances and these feelings of insecurity in that home. It wasn't long before they did move out eventually, and they have bought a new property, and since then that property they've moved again. But it's very interesting how these things can be attached to these sometimes items, but more so locations. A lot of places that either I can't confirm whether he died there. I do know where the location is. Again, for privacy, I'm not going to disclose it here, but I do plan to look more into it and to see what exactly happened. Did this man die on this property? Did he die in that house? Or was he just so attached to it because, again, he built this. He built the house, and that's something that just drew his spirit, drew him to it. Like, what uncompleted work did he have in life that resulted on him just staying behind and being attached to this area, this home? Why would he make a point of strapping my aunt into the bed and just stare at her? I often wonder, like, perhaps it was him thinking this was my daughter and I'm just tucking her in or something weird like that. I definitely don't know, but that was the most significant thing that happened to my family when they resided in that home. Now, additionally, my uncle had another experience, and this was something that my father was actually present for as well. And again, my father remembered it very, very well. My uncle, not so much, but my father was the one who told me this when my uncle was present. When they were both around 9 years old, again, they're both very similar in age. My uncle was 9. They were in a home in the basement of my grandparents' house, and my grandparents were both asleep. My uncle had to get up to use the bathroom. And as he proceeded to get up, he saw a woman, and he could not recall what she was wearing, except that it was definitely a little bit older garb. It wasn't anything modern or current. But again, that's all he can kind of recollect. But the thing he does certainly remember was it stood in that doorway and it was staring at him. This was a relatively new building. It was not old, it was not dated, and I believe they were doing an expansion and renovations on this basement area, putting in some new bedrooms. So this was an area, again, where my uncle and my dad were staying together. When he saw her, he freaked. My dad, and this is part of the story that always makes me kind of crack up, he had nunchucks. He grabbed the nunchucks. He was ready to go. You have like 7, 8-year-old, this boy ready to go, ready to nunchuck any paranormal spirits in his path. And I admire his brazenness. They explored. They couldn't find anything. No sign of this woman. The doors were locked. Their parents, my grandparents, were asleep upstairs. There was no explanation. That was the only time that had happened. And yeah, I find it baffling. I really do. So there's been other experiences and other times with my family experiencing interesting things. And I'm trying to pry a little bit more into that because I think that just in general, our parents and our grandparents, things happen and they bottle it up and they keep it inside them. My uncle, he's not the kind of man to believe this sort of stuff. He's a very logical man, realistic man. Same as my dad. I'm not saying they're closed-minded, but they're not particularly super open-minded on to that spectrum of things. I think they certainly do have a sense of belief, like, hey, there's always that what if, possibility, because they won't disregard it whatsoever. But at the same time, they're hardworking men. They're your old-fashioned kind of guy that goes out, go into the bush, hiking, 4x4ing, hunting, quadding, and all that kind of jazz, But they also like going out fishing and kayaking and boating. Like, that's like your general go-to West Coast Canadian kind of older gentleman from decades past. And I just think that so many of our family members, so many of our parents, and especially our grandparents, they have these experiences and these stories. Again, this is in relation to the German Dogman Campfire Clues episode I did prior. They found that information that their grandfather had experienced. Again, you can go all the way back to one of the earlier Cryptid Clues episodes, one of the Encounters episodes, Dogman at Bailey Creek, where she was explaining how it was a relative that experienced this entity, this dogman, on her porch, or his porch, sorry. I think that there's so much that we need to just dive in and ask before it's all gone, because once they pass, that history is long gone, and there's so many experiences that I've read that are just by sheer chance and fluke that they even come out into like the real world and come to light, where they disclose these experiences and these stories to like the next generation, their grandkids or their kids and all that. So I think it's incredibly important that we kind of ask. And I have a few more family members that I need to ask and I need to inquire with, because this just happened out of the blue. Someone was, we're all gathered, me and my family, and someone asked me, hey, how's the podcast doing? I'm like, oh, Cryptid Clues is going good. Like, just had a few interviews, stuff like that. And all of a sudden, my dad and my uncle were present. My dad's like, who you should talk to your uncle. And I'm like, really? Why is that? And then my uncle starts going off and telling me this whole experience that he had, that I just thought, wow. I started taking notes, asking him all these questions, thinking, wow, this is insane. So I thought this is great for an episode. This is great for one of these episodes. I want to talk about this with you guys and just share this story. And I'm just curious if anyone else out there has actually had some experience where they're out and living in a house and they get a mysterious visitor, or they start experiencing things in this older house, because again, older homes are definitely susceptible to something going on. And there's little folklore, maybe not folklore is probably the wrong term, little local legends. An old movie theater has an old janitor walking around the halls and stuff. We got a lot of that here in Canada and in British Columbia in itself. So old places have old spirits attached to them. I firmly believe that. But yeah, that basically wraps up this episode. I just thought it'd be super cool to share this. It's very close to home to me, and I hope you enjoyed this experience. But until next time, I'll be back with Ruben for next week's main Cryptid Clues episode. So again, some couple of plugs. You can check us out on our website, CryptidClues.ca. You can check us out in our email, CryptidClues@gmail.com. Send us an email and your experience, your story. Just want to talk, say hi. It's all good. And then you can check us out on our social media channels and again on our Patreon. So until next time, stay safe, stay positive. We'll see you out there next time. Have a good one, everybody.